Hey everybody, it's John Kraska with Every Library and the Every Library Institute. Welcome to Wednesday, February 12th of Library Lovers Week 2025. Library Lovers Week 2025 across social media, Facebook, YouTube Live, here and there on other platforms as well. We're having a big chat this week with authors and illustrators and editors in the publishing industry and library lovers themselves about what it's like to be writing in America today, what it's like to be part of the culture of reading in America today. I want to talk to these authors about their books. I want to learn a little bit more about what makes them tick. And I also want to celebrate libraries. There are so many headlines right now around censorship and book bans. There are so many issues going on around the country where they're going after libraries and readers too. Not to change the headline in a Pollyanna sort of way, but in a very positive way. Like, we are all in this together. We do have a set of beliefs in a certain respect, certainly a set of values about reading and access. So, Library Lovers Week 2025. Here at Every Library, we do a tremendous amount of work pro bono for free for libraries. We work on library funding. We work on anti-censorship, anti-discrimination campaigns. And across all those different places, we fundraise. Folks, it is libraryloversweek.org. Your opportunity to donate as little as $3 to $5 monthly and get some nice stickers. You can put the stickers up anywhere. I mean, I'm a 1980s kid. I have a jean jacket full of stickers. You know, I'm a modern business person. Like, it's on the back of my laptop. Maybe I give it to my little kid, because they love stickers and they're going to ruin it. And then you're going to have to get another donation and get another sticker. Folks, libraryloversweek.org. We're going to put the money to work helping support libraries around the country in a lot of different ways. All right, it is my pleasure today to bring in Lisa Genova, author, and for a big chat. Lisa is the acclaimed, she's acclaimed as the Oliver Sacks of fiction and the Michael Crichton of brain science. Lisa is the New York Times bestselling author of Still Alice, Left Neglected, Love Anthony, Inside the O'Briens, and Remember. Still Alice was adapted into an Oscar-winning film starring Julianne Moore, Alec Baldwin, Kristen Stewart. She's graduated valedictorian from Bates College with a degree in biopsychology and holds a PhD in neuroscience from Harvard. Lisa, you are on the road right now, virtually and in person, I think, for More or Less Maddy. I want to spend a little time chatting with you about the book. It's fascinating. And then I want to talk to you about libraries. I don't know if you have a librarian story or a library story, but it's always interesting to hear how writers interact with reading. So can you tell our audience a little bit about More or Less Maddy, please? I want to hear it from you, and I want to dive into it with you.
Okay. So anyone who knows me knows that I write about people living with neurological diseases, disorders, mental illness this time, anything going on from the neck up that people tend to shy away from. So a lot of folks, if I don't know what's going on with you and you've got something going on inside your brain, you might be ignored, feared, or misunderstood. And I have found that fiction story is an excellent place. It's a magical place for people to step into those worlds and get a sense of what it might feel like to live with that. And this develops empathy and compassionate awareness. So this book is about a young woman. She just finished her freshman year at NYU. She's just got one foot into adulthood, just starting to try to figure out her identity and who she might want to be outside of sort of how she was raised. And she ends up with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. She's got some depression at first, and things in her life are going well, but she's really depressed. It's heavy. She's having a hard time getting dressed, hard time going to classes and focusing on things, enjoying anything. She ends up going to get, she goes to the health center and gets a prescription for an antidepressant. And if what she had been depression, that might have worked for her, but what is going on in her brain is bipolar disorder, and that catapults her into her first manic episode, and she ends up with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. So this book is a lot about her journey trying to figure out who she is with this, and discerning the difference between I am bipolar and I have bipolar.
That's really an interesting distinction, because the person forward, nature of that conversation is not often appreciated by people who aren't near people who are have any sort of situation like that going on. You mentioned empathy in what you're describing, and as you were saying it, I was eager to say the word empathy out loud, because we talk often in libraries and publishing about, the reason that you read fiction is to take you to some place that you've never been, you never will go, and maybe even have a there before the grace of God go I quality to it. The empathy and the understanding. So why? But okay, so you figured it out. How did you figure out that fiction was a way to talk to
Yeah.
folks who needed to listen to it?
It was sort of a happy accident. So I mean, I'm a neuroscientist, and my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I read everything I could get my hands on to try to understand this illness so that we could better take care of her as a family. And I learned a ton. And some of it was just interesting to the neuroscientist in me, and some of it was super helpful. So I read, the current understanding of the molecular neurobiology. I read scientific research papers. I read textbooks on the disease management and how this is going to be treated. I read lots of caregiving books like the 36-hour day. Information, intellectual stuff, like super helpful to a point. But what I found was in spending time with my grandmother is I was super uncomfortable around her. She didn't know who I was anymore. She was behaving strangely, lots of confusion, the symptoms of dementia. And I felt so bad for her and so heartbroken for her. But that's sympathy. And sympathy keeps us emotionally detached. Our experience is separate. It's kind of a way of otherizing. Oh, there's you over there with something so separate from me. Like, I can't really understand what's going on with you. I feel so bad for you. I didn't know how to get to empathy with my grandmother at the time. I didn't know how to feel comfortable enough joining her in her reality to feel with her. I didn't know how to feel with her. That's empathy. And so I recognize that, oh, isn't that interesting? Everything I've read is written from the point of view of an outsider looking in, right?
Mhm.
And they all lack the perspective of the person with it. And they're all nonfiction texts. I need a novel. I need,
Mhm.
like, fiction is the place where we get the chance to walk in someone else's shoes and join the character's reality and feel what they're feeling. It's not just intellectual. It's like I can feel the lived experience. And so that was my aha moment. I thought, oh, I need a novel about a woman with Alzheimer's told from her perspective.
Mhm.
And then I'll be able to understand what it feels like. I'll gain an access to
Mhm.
empathy. And that book became Still Alice.
That's very interesting. So there's, I don't know if it's a true quote or forgive me, an accurate quote coming out of my mouth, but Maya Angelou quote about you have to write the book that you want to read.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're writing, I mean, there are both very human components, to the narrative, but there's also some technical stuff in here. I mean, you've got complex medical and scientific conversations had. I think that you're not you're not simplifying things in a book like this.
No, but I'm
You-
not dumping my research on the reader either.
sure.
I do a ton of homework. I do a ton of research for these books, and so it is reading everything I can, interviewing anyone who's involved medically. So
Mhm.
for this book, it was psychiatrists and psychologists, and then also people who live with it and their families. Those are always my real experts who can
Mhm.
share the lived felt experience of the day to day. And what does this mean? What am I afraid of? What's hard about this? What do I want people to know? What's it like to get up in the morning and deal with this? Like, how does it change you? So I have a lot of those conversations with lots of people. And then, yeah, I'm not writing about a neurological condition really. I mean, that's there, but you're going to get that education through story. So
Mhm.
it's about our shared human condition. Ultimately,
Mhm.
it should be
Mhm.
relatable to anyone. And you're going to learn a lot about bipolar disorder, hopefully along the way.
There's so much fear, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there
Yes.
as well. Um, the 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 misconceptions. So I'm not assuming that this is happening to you, Lisa, but I can imagine that you're out at a book signing, you're out at an event, you're speaking somewhere, and somebody comes up to you and says, "You're the first person who's told the story properly for me.
Yeah.
You're the first person who's gotten it." The
Yeah.
misconceptions that are out there about memory loss and about brain health. That,
Yeah.
I mean, civilians are afraid. I think
Yes.
you're doing something that's really powerful to help bridge that fear gap.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yes, that's why I do what I do. And yes, I think there's so much fear and stigma and isolation and alienation. Man, it's lonely having this because people shy away from you and you don't not like the familiarity and the language isn't there. That bridge isn't there to cross to talk about it. So when we don't talk about something, it becomes secret, and secrecy breeds shame. And so I think that, bipolar disorder, any of the neurological conditions that are classified arbitrarily, by the way, calling something a mental illness, there's no biological reason for that. It's a made up term. I don't think it serves us very well, because I think as soon as you're labeled with something called mental illness, then on top of everything, there's another level of dismissiveness, distrust, fear, like, oh, I can't. I should be afraid of you. I'm going to look away. And so, yes, I hope this story dismantles a lot of the misconceptions and the assumptions and the judgment, and can help people see the real person struggling to live with something really complicated.
So can I ask, was Maddy a real person, or is Maddy sort of a composite of real people?
Neither of those. Yeah. On all of my books, I do lots of research. I get to know lots of people, but then I've made up a character that's totally separate from all of them. I'm still trying to tell the truth under the imagined circumstances. So I'm using, like, when Maddy is diagnosed with bipolar disorder and she's sitting opposite the psychiatrist and her mom is there, that conversation will be what it should sound like the medications she's put on and the side effects that she has to endure, and then what might happen next is going to feel very familiar and true and real for folks who live this. And hopefully they'll feel very seen and validated on the pages. But no, the character is made up, and her story, I mean, this young woman who chooses to become a stand-up comedian and drop out of college, and that's a story I came up with. So it's no one I've met.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain non-traditional quality to that. I mean,
I picked it.
Yeah. And did you initially yourself, though? I mean, did you have the great American novel in you the whole time that you were on a more academic path, or what got you this?
Not that I knew of. No, I was very much math and science and focused on becoming a neuroscientist. And I really loved being a scientist. I'm so happy that my path has turned into something totally unexpected. And I love talking to young people about that too, because I like to say, don't worry if you don't think you have to have your whole life figured out at 18, 22, 30 years old. I didn't start writing Still Alice until I was 33.
Yeah.
And I had no idea I was going to write anything before that.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, I started out in college as a playwright, and I'm running a political action committee for libraries right now. Life takes its turns, and you find where you find where your talent is. And I think that in More or Less Maddy, we have a character who certainly found her talent, when it came to changing her career, going into stand-up, doing that kind of big work. It was not the easiest path that she could have chosen. I mean, you gave your character not only some obstacles that are addressable through treatment and through conversation and through therapy, but also some challenges about breaking their own image of themselves and going on a new path. That, when you're talking to young people, when you're writing for an audience, it's very encouraging, I think, to read something like this.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. I really wanted to play around with the notion of, like, what is normal? Who gets to decide that? And especially for a young woman, if you, in our patriarchal culture, if you step outside of what's expected of you, what's normal for a woman, what if I want to pursue a career that's mostly male dominated? What if I don't want to get married and have kids? What if I drop out of college? Like, no, you're supposed to do these things.
Yes.
And so I wanted to play around with her choosing something that would be seen as threatening to normalcy, threatening to her stability as a normal young woman. So that would raise the stakes for her. I also just love that choosing, we humans often use humor to reach across the bridge and relate to each other over something uncomfortable or difficult. And I also loved stand-up comedy, when it's like really good stand-up comedy, usually has something deeper to say underneath the funny. And on stage, if you're killing it, it's going really well. That's a a euphoria and a high and an amazing feeling when it's connected and everybody's laughing, kind of like mania, like a metaphor for mania. And if I'm bombing and no one's laughing and we can't reach each other and it's just a complete disconnect, it's the worst feeling and you just want to get the heck out of there. It's kind of lonely and isolated and depressing. So I like the metaphor of it as well. So there's a lot of layers to that choice of making her a comedian.
Yeah, can I ask? I mean, did you have a comedian that you modeled her on, or do you have somebody kind of in mind that's I mean, I listen to some podcasts. I mean, you might listen to some podcasts. I listen to Mark Maron.
Okay.
His WTF. He's a comedian's comedian. He interviews a lot of comedians.
Okay.
And it's always interesting to hear about the
See, there's
craft.
so many out there. I did interview a lot of comedians. So no, she's not modeled after anyone.
Mhm.
I would say the closest comedian that she is like is Taylor Tomlinson.
Oh, sure.
Young
Yes.
and has bipolar disorder. And I didn't
Yes.
learn that she came out with her Netflix special, Look at You, talking about having bipolar disorder when I was like halfway through writing the book. I'm like, oh my God, she's my main character.
Yeah.
But I interviewed Amy Schumer and Maria Bamford, and
wow.
then a bunch of other comedians, one who's a resident in Vegas and a bunch of others who are in New York and sort of just on sort of the earlier part of their careers. I took a stand-up comedy writing class out of New York City, and I did a 5-minute set to try and get good at comedy writing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And when we're in the green room after the show, I'm gonna give you a link to Mark Maron's thing because he talks about the 5-minute set as the purest form of art. So yeah,
cool. Thank you.
No, that's really cool. So speaking of art, I mean, Still Alice, your earlier book was made into a critically acclaimed film. I mean, that's cool as hell. Congratulations. Art, like when you think about Maddie, who's playing Maddie? In your mind.
I can't tell you because I already know who it is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't meaning to do that. I apologize.
No, it was so fine. I wish I could tell you. We're close. We're gonna get our director, and once we have our director secured, we can announce who's playing Maddie. But it's in development.
Congratulations. That's wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's fun. I mean, and hopefully it will happen. Like I have 4 in development right now, and it's been tough between the pandemic, the writers' strike, the actors' strike. It's been a journey. So hopefully
No, I can imagine. So let me ask you 1 or 2 more questions about this, and I want to open up the conversation about libraries because it is Library Lovers Month. It's Library Lovers Week. It could be Library Lovers Day on Friday. If somebody is inspired by reading More or Less Maddy, do you have any recommendations for them about books or organizations or places to follow up on, either as a family member or somebody themselves who's wondering?
Yes. The International Bipolar Foundation is excellent. One of my favorites. I list them on my website. I have something called Readers in Action. So if after finishing my books, if you're inspired to get involved, learn more, join support groups, maybe donate money to help with resources for care or research for treatments, I have that link at my website. Thank you for putting that up. Kay Jamison is a great author. She has bipolar disorder and she writes about it beautifully in a couple of memoirs. A book called Madness by Maria Hornbecker. I think her last name is. I always mispronounce. But that's really good. That should be helpful.
That's fantastic.
Those are good.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. And again, folks, More or Less Maddy. But we're not done, Lisa. I want to talk about libraries. So, before I do, I want to mention to everybody else, everybody again, here's the link to our fundraiser. It's libraryloversweek.org. The reason it's Library Lovers Week is because it's more than just a hobby. It's reading's a lifestyle. Reading's something you're passionate about. So, Lisa, I mean, you didn't start out as an author. You got there. What were you reading on your pathway to becoming an author?
Oh gosh. So, I mean, other than all the technical brain science stuff, I've loved Oliver Sacks. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat was a favorite for sure. I've always loved Jodi Picoult. And she's now a friend, which is so trippy and lovely.
Yes, and she's been on Every Library Live before. We had her on when she was doing early work on the documentary that was called the 97, and I can't remember what it's the name of it now. I'll put it in the chat
Okay.
later on. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
fantastic.
she's amazing. She's a fierce advocate and defender of reading and books and,
Yeah,
fighting the bans.
that's right.
Love her. Um, yeah, I mean, along the way, I mean, I'm a big reader now. So right now I'm reading Wedding People, um, which is great. I'm really enjoying that. I just finished All Fours. Yeah, I'm always reading one book and listening to another.
That's fantastic. You and my
Yeah.
wife will get along famously. There's this is the home office here, so there's a pile of books by our bedside that's going to fall over and kill us one night. So yeah. So tell me, Lisa, do you have a library story or a librarian story? Because sometimes people have both, but sometimes people are more like, oh yeah, this place was it, or this person was it for me.
Yeah, I have I live on Cape Cod, and our library here in our little small town isn't open 9 to 5 every day. They have like shortened hours. So I couldn't write in the library, which has always broken my heart a little. I'm
Oh
from
yeah.
just outside of Boston, and the Cambridge Public Library and the Boston Public Library, I mean, I can't I want to live there. Like
Hmm.
I would write all of my books in those libraries if I lived anywhere near those. But the one I live near here now, my memory that I love is when my son was a toddler. He was obsessed with Thomas the Train, and I was editing Left Neglected. I was, going through trying to fix all of the mistakes and just sort of rearrange things and edit. I was in the editing process. I edited that book in the children's section of the library here, the Eldridge Public Library. And
Eldridge,
while my
okay.
son toddled
Yeah.
around the Thomas the Train, I sat with red pen
Hmm.
editing Left Neglected.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
The Eldridge Public Library in Cape Cod. That's a great shout out.
Yeah.
And
And
I've been,
libraries in general, like it's just like my favorite book events are at libraries. Like I love that they're just great gathering places for community.
mhm.
I mean, libraries are just so essential. It's for the young moms with their children. It's for older community to come, and it's classes. It's book events. It's authors. It's libraries are the best.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's
Yeah.
I'm not a librarian by trade. I came at this because I want to see those institutions and those people doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
It's got to be an interesting moment to be an author who's working on issues that are complex and they're based in identity and they're not easy solutions. I mean, right now there's a lot of censorship royal in this country. There's a lot of book bans and there's a lot of attacks
Yeah.
on person forward like you are. I mean, are you seeing that out there when you're doing readings? Are you seeing that on the internet right now? What's your experience of it?
Well, I'm aware of it on the internet and social media, and
Mhm.
I mean, it's upsetting for sure. I'm lucky in that when I show up for my book events, people are coming to the library
Yeah.
wanting to read and saying, "Oh, I've read all of your books," and you're right, my books aren't easy, innocuous beach reads. Like there's
Hmm.
complicated, heavy stuff, hard stuff. This book is about a woman with bipolar disorder. There, suicidal ideation is in there.
Hmm.
Cutting is in there. There's some hard stuff. It's
Hmm.
real. Being human, it can be hard. And to pretend that it's only one version of humanity exists and that it's easy and I don't know. We need everybody's stories. How are we going to understand each other? How are we going to have empathy for each other? This is one of the ways. It's like if you're different than I am, one of the ways I can approach you or feel like I can not have to turn away or be afraid of you is if I have some familiarity and if I have some love in my heart, if I have some compassion and empathy from having read a story, perhaps that is the bridge. And so it's just one of our most powerful tools to understanding each other.
Hmm.
And to take that away, like, no, stop it. Just stop it.
Maybe the mentioning Thomas the Tank Engine did this to me, but we talk about libraries as places of opportunity. All the books give you opportunity. But what you're describing here is the library potentially as an empathy engine. It's a motivating force because it does have so much in it. Your book included. that those intersection points for empathy, you have to be able to intersect with something. If that library's not open, if that library doesn't have the collection that supports the community,
Right.
if that library doesn't have nonfiction and fiction that intersect with real life, and it's
Yeah.
all fluff, I mean, you don't have an empathy engine then.
No. And you know what? We like the next scientist, social worker, politician, doctor, nurse, like archaeologist, I don't know what it is. Then like you might not discover what is your passion and service to the world if you don't have access to reading about it. Like you don't know what worlds are open, like going to a library and all that's there and available to you for free
Yeah,
is gives you access to discovering parts of you that you didn't know existed.
that's fantastic.
I mean, come on.
You know, I really appreciate you bringing this to us today here on Every Library Live for Library Lovers Week, Lisa. The book itself has some very important learning moments for people who are curious, but living moments, for people who want to learn a little bit more in that empathy kind of space. I appreciate the work that you're doing and the kind of way that you're writing, and also bringing it with that library kind of point of intersection. You're very kind to us for sharing with our audience today. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Yeah. Team, if you want to find Lisa's, LisaGenova.com. Again, it's more or less Maddy. I love holding up books, by the way. I just pretend I'm Seth Meyers here. I'm just trying to do it, Lisa,
Thank you, John.
Yeah. And then I got one more commercial here. Again, folks, we're a donor-supported organization. This work during Library Lovers Week is intended to have these conversations that are leavening, about America and about reading and about why do we do the work that we do. And I come out of this very energized, and I hope you do too, in listening to what Lisa has to say. We want to hit the bricks again tomorrow, though, working on crisis, working on supporting libraries through opportunities as well. LibraryLoversWeek.org. If you can start as small as a $3 to $5 a month donation, and we will put it to work in so many different ways. So, Lisa, again, thank you. I want to hold you in the green room after we're done. I'm going to put up the screen and wave at you and say thank you. Thanks to everybody for watching today.
Thank you, John.
Absolutely. Here we go.